Recent mutilation, sorry, a little late. Okay, so this is a recent mutilation at a major cattle operation within an 80-mile radius of here is all I can say at the moment. It's going to be getting attention from the FBI. At this point, the state director is involved. So everything's sort of hush-hush, but there's so many people involved at this point. There's preachers involved. There is brand inspectors, cattle investigators. And I was actually called in because a brand inspector recommended that he get an alternative viewpoint. I'm the alternative. The chief of police and the law enforcement that were on site investigating this immediately came to the conclusion that it must be a satanic cult that did this because of how the animal was found. Interestingly, this image here, and I didn't have a laser pointer that had batteries that worked, so I brought my infrared thermometer.
I have one if you want to use mine.
Oh, I think this is. Does this work? Can you see that? Okay. So this is an infrared thermometer, so I can tell you the temperature on the screen. But this is the animal right here. What color is your laser pointer?
It's green.
Green. That might be.
It's like really green.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. Okay. These are the good ones too. Okay. All right, this is the animal right here, and this is after the animal was dead. This gentleman has substantial means and put cameras throughout the property. And if you notice up here, this image doesn't show it as much, but there seems to be three figures. Mm-hmm. The figure on the right seems to have horns. I don't know if you can see that. Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can lower the lights.
Oh yeah, can we lower the lights a little bit?
It might help.
Thank you, Johnny. And Johnny's an integral part of this investigation as well. He actually spoke with the rancher today because I recommended he get a blessing due to what we're going to get into, and that they bless the property as well. The preacher went out, and that was all well and good, but he wanted to talk to a heavyweight, which Johnny is. Someone that has experience in both the indigenous ways and Christianity. And Johnny was able to kind of calm this man down a little bit because of what he's encountered. Sort of a spiritual anomalous attack since the blessing. He started seeing shadow people, and I mean, we're talking about just this last day. And we talked this morning, Johnny did, with him for a good amount of time. So very real, scary stuff and happening right now. So yeah, we've got the animal, unbelievable scenario. This animal has been there since July 3rd. Temperatures, as you know, are really hot outside. It's in the exact same condition that it was 4 days after it died. Nothing has changed. No predators have touched it. There's absolutely zero, and I mean zero, insects, flies. Nothing even comes close to this thing except for us. And since we saw it, I actually went with my mom and some other people. We have felt like we got hit by a truck. Our bones hurt. We just aren't. It's not good. Not good. My initial reaction when I saw the animal is, well, we got a dead cow. How long has it been here? And where's the smell? There was like no smell of death. As I approached the animal, the smell became overwhelming of chemicals, or what you would expect in a laboratory, a clinical type smell that was overwhelming. Like when you got really close to it, it just smelled like ozone, ammonia, sulfur. It smelled like I was at a science lab at school and somebody spilled everything. The coincidences. Now, this is another mutilation at the same property. Now, there's been 3 mutilations. This last one is the most recent, happened July 3rd. So it's been 6 weeks since this one's been there. The previous one, this is another one. But 6 weeks, like I said, hasn't really deteriorated at all.
Are these near your property?
It's within an 80-mile radius of yep. So we have the pericardium sac removed, which is a very difficult process. That is a little sac that goes around the heart, whose job it is to protect the heart from injury and other things. If you just had to remove that, it would be a major, major surgical procedure. But the way that it was done on this animal is impossible, basically, by human standards in the field.
Sac and content, so is the heart gone with the sac?
No, yeah. So
Okay.
if the eye was also removed to the optic nerve, which is a good distance in, and it seemed like the cut was about like this thing, about just a perfectly cylindrical, all the way in, cookie cutter type cut. Everything was cauterized, which means it had to be over 300 degrees for it to cauterize the wound, so that it still looks, and I'll get to the eye, it still looks exactly the way it did 4 days after the animal died. The rear end was cored out, same thing, 6 inches in, cauterized at over 300 degrees, and absolutely surgical precision. We'll get to those beautiful pictures in a minute. Sexual organs removed. This was a prize Wagyu sire to the herd. It was a $10,000 animal. And the sexual organs were removed in an oval shape, and again, cauterized, perfectly done. The animal was, one of the first questions, he cared about the bull because it's obviously, you know, he makes his money with this animal and others. And he said, how do you think it died? And I said, most likely cardiac arrest, because these are big animals, they're tough animals. And typically what ends up happening is that they are somehow sedated and they die from the trauma of what happens to them. So they're alive when all this happens, but they can't move, so they're paralyzed. There was exsanguination. In other words, exsanguination means there was zero blood inside the animal, none. And that's why law enforcement believes that it was a satanic cult. The problem is that with a satanic cult, you're going to have more than just 3 dudes, one wearing horns, to drink all that blood, right? That's a lot of blood in an animal that big to just disappear. So the other strange things, he saw odd animals after this mutilation. The odd animals looked a lot like what people would typically call chupacabras, a lot like coyotes or wolves with mange, 0 hair, long tails, very thin. And interestingly, prior to investigating this particular mutilation, at my property, I caught practically the identical animal, which you'll run into these synchronicities, sort of like the Mothman prophecies, where they don't make sense, like these coincidences that it's like, wait, that has nothing to do with this, but why did I catch this right before they reached out to me? And then he caught them right after he reached out to me. So I'll see if I can play this video of this animal we caught at Space Wolf Research right before he reached out to me. Super thin, seems aware of a camera which is completely silent, large eyes, 0 hair, super thin. Sent it out to a number of people. Some of them were from Berkeley, professionals in their field. And they said, well, Ryan, I can tell you what I'm supposed to tell you. And that is that it's a coyote with mange, except this has 0 hair. It has a thinner body than the typical coyote with mange. And if it's sick, it shouldn't be hunting at night, which is apparently what it's doing. We also had some anomalous lights pop up. They pop up like right around here in close proximity. It should enter, there it is, Look at the length of the neck on this thing. Very strange looking animal.
This video doesn't really do it justice either, actually.
Yeah, there's some better videos that aren't as compressed. Eric's seen them.
It shapeshifts, by the way.
It does shapeshift a little. So there's a light right there, and we have another anomalous light pop up. It seems to be aware of the camera, which is really strange, that it's aware of the camera. Its eyes seem a little larger than normal, especially when it looks at the camera. And you'll see these other animals that I encountered afterwards, which seem extremely similar. There is some cowering. It seems this is in the middle of the night, by the way. This is an infrared camera, so it shouldn't be able to see anything on the camera itself, but it's aware of its surroundings. We had another anomalous light appear. Had to replay it a couple times here. There's another one right there. Anyway, you get the idea. An animal that shouldn't be there, lights that shouldn't be there, and this was right before I got the phone call. There it is leaving. Okay, now let's go back to his property. I get the phone call. I check out his claims. After the mutilation, he captures this animal, which seems very similar, and not just one. Is that synchronicity? I don't know. But he catches another one that seems very similar. More than one directly afterwards, and that's when I was like, okay, I guess we do have to look at this, because my first reaction was like, well, that's a coincidence. And then he's like, I got another one. And I'm like, okay, that's getting weird, right? So the issue with this, when you're dealing with the science versus the supernatural, is they tend to come together. And as an example, if you're looking at just the science, the pericardium is a sac that I spoke of that encloses the heart, providing protection and lubrication. It's a double-layered structure with a fluid-filled space between the layers. It reduces friction during heartbeats. The outer layer is tougher and it anchors to the heart, while the inner layer secretes lubricating fluid. So the question is, it's a very particular little part of the body. Why would they take that, right? So it shields the heart from injury and infection. It lubricates the fluid between the layers to allow the heart to move smoothly in the chest cavity. And it helps hold the heart in place, which is strange. It also prevents the heart from overfilling with blood. And if there's an examination scenario where they're removing all the blood for the animal, that's where my ding, 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 that's where my buttons, my bells and whistles go off. It probably has something with removing all the blood from the animal. There was other strange happenings with this particular animal that I'm going to get into. Before I get into the strange happenings of how it all started. As I said, he's had 3 different mutilations. One particular mutilation was a prize cow that was in a corral. In a corral, fully enclosed to keep her away from like these awesome bulls. And she was found 4 pastures away. 4 pastures away. So she would have had to come out of the corral, somehow gone through 4 fences, which all the fences were intact, and be placed in the same field as this other one was found. Absolutely impossible. Human beings can't do that unless they have a team, an anchor, a cradle, a helicopter, a full surgical team on site, etc. That's one of them. The other one also was found in an area where it shouldn't have been found, from his winter pasture to his summer pasture. And these 3 animals were in a triangular formation. So a perfect triangle formation, and nothing has gone in or out of that triangle since. They don't even like to be. We were there, we watched the herd and how they interacted with us, and they didn't want to be anywhere near this animal. So how did this all start? He moved animals into a meadow, and the mutilations continued. So he's moved them around. It's a big ranch. He is managing over 48,000 acres. So this guy knows what he's doing. He started to have issues that were unexplained. And this is right prior to this mutilation, he had a scenario where, I talked about it a little bit earlier, law enforcement was transporting a convict. This convict was in the back of the law enforcement vehicle, broke the window with his head. He jumped out of the moving vehicle at 65 miles an hour. He ran barefoot from law enforcement into this ranch, and they tried to find him for 2 hours. He hot-wired an ATV on the property, took them on another 5-hour wild goose chase through the property, and in the process, multiple sacred indigenous sites were disturbed. And then he had the mutilation. What's interesting is another very strange fact is this is like surreal supernatural strength that this person had. And they tested him for, they figured maybe he's got PCP or meth or something to keep this guy going, right? Doing all this stuff. No, he had nothing in his system. So he did all these surreal, supernatural things and disturbed all these sites. Now, there was a camera that took all kinds of photos after the mutilation. And it's something that is really strange because he called in people that he called medicine men. They gave him their general idea of what they believed, but it was much more valuable to have Johnny having, basically having one foot in each world, being able to explain to him. He's a Christian, the rancher is, and he was very concerned about what he was hearing from the medicine men and what he was hearing from the preacher, and he's like, wait a minute, I can't juggle this. And Johnny kind of has helped him navigate that, so thank you. So he was told to put out juniper berries, dream catchers, clean things up. He was told that to move the animals around to his winter range, the lower range. The preacher blessed the whole ranch and the rancher this week. That was actually the day before yesterday. And then yesterday he started seeing shadow figures. Things got weird, and they're getting weirder. So from the Native American aspect, this is where I talk about Johnny, which I've already done. The trust, I wasn't going to name him, but he's here. So the trusted associate with Space Wolf Research helped and explained to him that, the understanding of one supreme God, that in the belief is that you don't have to juggle these two things, because if there's one supreme God, it's basically, you're okay, you're doing everything you need to do. And that the philosophies are okay. And he explained to him that there's good and there's bad. It's always been that way, and he's just kind of in the middle of it right now. Johnny also mentioned smoke people, because the guy's seeing these shadows on a daily basis since the blessing. And these smoke people are ones who walk in the shadows who you can kind of see through, what we would call shadow people, right? And they've always been a scenario when you're dealing with some of these darker scenarios, aspects, death, and they are also trapped here. Here's an image he captured of what seems to be a shadow person, and you can kind of tell, you can sort of see through it. It's there, but it's not really there, but it's dark enough, there's something. And these are the things that he's been seeing. There seems to be a lot going on this case. I can't talk about all of it. This is a corral where he found a perfect circle, which very much looks like an alternative explanation of what has transpired. The reality is that it may not be what law enforcement thinks it is. It may not be exactly what law enforcement thinks it is, because law enforcement at this moment doesn't have a whole lot of answers. Their easiest answer seems to be satanic cult, because there's a lot of things missing. They don't know how they did it, and there's a supernatural aspect that law enforcement can't answer. That supernatural aspect is not only the movement of the animals, how these animals have been eviscerated and what parts are taken and how the blood is all gone, But the fact that 72 inches around this animal, if you get near the animal, and he told me this over the phone and I didn't believe him. If you get near the animal, he said, you can put as many footprints as you want, but within an hour or two, they're all gone. And I thought, okay. And sure enough, when you walked around it, it was like walking on memory foam. And your footprints just seemed to disappear. So there were no footprints around the animal, which is impossible to explain. The fact that no predators have touched it, the fact that there seems to be no insects that have touched it, the fact that there seems to be literally flying saucer shapes in the middle of the corral are something that they can't explain. As I mentioned, I've had a ton of physical pain since the proximity. This image here was taken 2 days ago? 2 days? Tuesday, thank you. Tuesday, and it literally just feels like I'm falling apart inside. This is the best way I can explain it. My body hurts, my neck, my shoulders, serious pain. My mom's having the same thing. And this comes into the negative entities. We've heard of skinwalkers, but there's also just walkers, demons that want to get into you and they want to use you to do their bidding. And oftentimes there are physical attributes when you're close in proximity to some of these darker events that you'll feel an actual physical ailment that you kind of have to battle, not only the actual event itself. So we seem to be dealing with that. I'm not too worried. I seem to have a predisposition to deal with these dark things pretty good. I don't know. I don't think it's anything of my own doing, but I seem to bounce back pretty quick. Now there's figures on the property that seem to be popping up. You can kind of see one right there near the water trough. And he can't explain what they're doing. And they're not actual people. He's got ranch hands that are going out and checking. The minute he gets an image on one of his cameras, he'll call his caretaker shows up, we met his caretaker, and there's nothing there. There's just nothing there, So there's something going on. He lives pretty close to the property. He's a professional, and as I said, he's reached out to a variety of different people. This morning, actually, before I talked here at 10 a.m., I was out on the phone with the FBI. This has since gone to the state director, and it is going to go to the national level of FBI investigations. So it seems that everything that is being gathered is legitimate, and it's heading in that direction. This is where I think I already talked about it. Let's see if I missed anything about the convict that escaped. Nope, got all that. Supernatural strength and powers. And we find this often. Now here, this is an actual pretty good view of the backside of the animal. I took a soil sample. We're checking for a number of things, but that chemical smell is really what stuck with me. I can't shake it. It's just unnatural in every sense of the word. And you can kind of get an idea how well preserved this thing is for having been there 6 weeks in very hot temperatures in a place where if you leave a potato chip out, it's not there in 10 minutes. Anything, stuff out here is looking for a meal and it wants it, and zero predation at all. So at this point, he's just trying to get things calmed down. Now, looking at the animal, I'm going to go over some of the other things that were found. Tongue removed, put back in sideways. Eye gone down to the optic nerve. Strange cut along the back, surgical precision, most likely taking out parts that were necessary. 300-degree, 6-inch cauterization and laser-like precision on almost all of the wounds. And the fact that there's no blood, this is something that really, really brings that alternative perspective and the potential for in my opinion, UFO offsite processes. Yes, they're probably very dark entities. Yes, they're probably up to no good. And the question is, how are they doing what they're doing? Why are people seeing strange things in the sky and on the ground in this area? And this is an area where Project Blue Book was in full effect in the 70s. This was actually one of their very first areas through here. So yeah, the potential for UFO offsite surgical processes, in my opinion, is huge. And law enforcement has a hard time with this. This is why this is why I was on the phone with the FBI. You kind of have to kick it up a notch because they tend to just say, this is what we got, this is what it is, and they just want to close the case. I don't blame them. It's their job. And the problem is that over the years, there are hundreds, and I mean hundreds of these cases where you have the exact same cuts, the exact same body parts missing, the same 6-inch, 300-degree cauterization, the eyes removed, the optic nerve removed. Textbook. Same thing has happened over and over and over and over again. It's not just a cow tripping and falling and it's like a freak accident. So I think the potential for off-site surgical process is huge. Now, some closer cases, one with the Shermans, who Robert Bigelow purchased their property. They had a scenario where they had just tagged an animal. They were going to tag another one. They passed a new calf on the way. They were less than 75 yards away from this thing. They tagged the next animal, and when they turned around, the calf that they just passed was completely eviscerated and mutilated on the ground. They didn't hear anything, they didn't see anything, and they were just right there. When they checked out the animal, again, the same textbook situations, the same scenarios. And what's odd is drained of blood. I mean, this is a huge process, and they didn't hear anything. So off-site surgical processes come to mind, especially if you're in something that can twist or bend the space-time continuum, which many quantum engineers, astrophysicists, people at the top of their fields, many of which were involved with black budget Pentagon projects like ATIP and OSAP, like Eric Davis, they have documented in their work that wormholes and the bending of space-time are most likely how these craft move, and most likely the way to reverse engineer some of this technology. Things like negative tomography, etc., but the use of traversable wormholes, bending space-time. And if you're able to do that, within a minute or so, you could probably snatch a calf, do what you had to do, it might take however long it takes, and put it back down, and people right there within close proximity wouldn't hear or see anything. So that becomes a reality. Now, I'm not discounting any of the Native American aspect or the indigenous, because they are fully aware that there has been high strangeness in this area. They have known of the star people for a long time, as they've called them. And people are people. There's good, there's bad. And it's interesting because you'll find this permeates all cultures. Do you guys know how much time we have?
Till 3:30.
Till 3:30, good. Okay, this permeates all cultures. And like I often like to say, you know, people are people, evil is evil, but good is good. So as far as the rancher's perspective, he just wants this to stop happening. These are really expensive animals. It's hurting his bottom line. He's getting all these negative effects like seeing shadow people, and he's just a good guy. So we're having a lot of effort into trying to help him mitigate this scenario. I'm really glad that he reached out to me, that brand inspector said, hey, you should talk to this guy, and that a mutual friend is involved, and more mutual friends are getting involved. Now, again, another synchronicity is I was contacted by D. Butler from Dublin, Ireland, and he was telling me about a terrifying alien agenda over there. A totally different culture, totally different scenario, totally different animal. He has documented countless cases very similar, and it's not always cows. You run into this all the time. There's cases of deer, elk, horses. There's Snippy the horse over in Colorado comes to mind, just off the top of my head. And D. Butler told me about a horrific case where a sheep farm in Ireland had almost 600 sheep die after having their tongues surgically removed. And they died. Now, this is inexplicable by human hands, especially when the time frames don't add up. Getting back to that bending of space-time, this brings all kinds of things to mind. When you think of time travel, I mean, you don't have to actually travel time, you just have to slow it down a bit, right? You don't have to actually stop the clock. You just need to adjust it a little bit to get these things done. And this stuff has been documented for quite some time. There are people, this is since the 80s, who have taken out patents to literally slow down time, to be able to slow down time for things like keeping organs that are getting ready for transplant operations in a better stasis. And the interesting way that people have actually figured out how to do this is by studying things like satellites. If a satellite's off just a little bit, things go way askew. They want to keep them in the correct course. And the same calculations that help keep these satellites on course for the Air Force are the same calculations that have helped people figure out time manipulation. And they don't call it time travel, but it's basically slowing it down. And it's been documented. It is true. It is real. You can look it up. And for example, this box has been formulated that basically anything inside this box up until about the size of a soccer ball, if you place human organs in there, this technology can slow down time enough that they are more fresh when they're implanted into the next individual. And it's an interesting technology. It's interesting that this comes from literally analyzing satellites in space. And if we have this technology, it's likely that the star people or these unseen intruders probably also have something similar. Now, I got this morning, and from him. This is one of the shadows. I don't know if you can see how big this thing is. That's the outline right there. That is a huge pole barn with massive, massive stacks of hay. So just this little stack right here of hay right there, that's going to be over 800 pounds. And look at how many there are. So these are probably, I don't know, 3 feet tall. So we've got 4 or 5 stacks tall. And whatever this shadow entity is absolutely massive, huge. And I don't know what it is. It definitely looks like something ominous. And I got this morning after he got his blessings. And not only that, there's more. There seems to be a shadow to the shadow. And there seems to be, just off camera, potentially another one. So I don't know what these are. They almost look like dinosaur-sized entities. I'm not saying that's what they are, but that is an absolutely massive shadow that he's caught there. And if you look at some of these studies into non-human intelligence, oftentimes you'll get the same things coming up that, size, shape, really doesn't matter. We're just talking about big entities, big dark entities. There's numerous accounts of massive shadowy figures, blob squatches, you name it, that people have encountered. Similar and in close proximity to some of this high strangeness. Now, something that also ties to space, I mentioned the satellites and how some of this technology into time travel has gone into manipulating space-time. This stuff has been documented for years. Like I said, I was shocked to find out that it started in the 80s, that patents were being gathered to slow down the clock in the 80s. But they were. What I think is potentially horrific surrounding some of these cattle mutilations is it's not just time-space manipulation, it's not just the horrific nature of what's being done to these animals, the fact that they're literally dying of heart attacks in clinical surroundings that don't seem to be where they're found or where they're taken. But potentially the strangest part is an enigma that is known as prions, which deals with proteins which are not stable. Now this study is very intriguing. Prions are something that we all have, proteins that can become unbalanced. But the way that these things become unbalanced is dark. As an example, we've heard of people getting like zombies, right? Or mad cow disease. Bovine spongiform encephalopathy in cattle is the same as this zombification that takes place in humans, and Crutchfield-Jacobs disease. It's the exact same scenario, just a different species. Well, how did bovine spongiform encephalopathy or mad cow disease happen? I mean, they shouldn't happen in a natural, perfect world. But what happened in Europe is they started realizing, oh, a cow died in the field. It's kind of a waste to just leave it there. Why don't we grind it up and put it in the feed for the other cows? It seems like a win-win. However, when they did this, it worked at first, worked for a little while, but nature began to fold upon itself. This is an animal that should not be eating itself. And these proteins became imbalanced. These prions started mad cow disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy. So literally the entity that's eating itself, like the snake eating its own tail, ceases to exist in a normal neural way. It enters into a path of neural degeneration or neurosis. And we find that with cannibals, for example, Kuru disease coming out of New Guinea. And this is a more spiritual thing, and I get what they were doing. They would, as a reverent gesture to their deceased family members, not only were they starving, which I'm sure came into place, but as a spiritual gesture of reverence to their deceased family members, it was their tradition to eat their family members and kind of partake of them. And same thing, this worked for a little while, and then pretty soon they got Kuru disease, which is essentially these prions, this neurosis taking place. And believe it or not, a lot of the symptoms of Kuru disease are things like seeing shadow people, things like turning zombie-like. And these proteins get very, very complex. Now, with the cattle mutilations, what's absolutely fascinating is oftentimes, and we're going to find this out in the testing, the soil testing, if we find prions, and I don't doubt for a minute that we will, if we find prions that shouldn't be there, from an outside source, usually outside of the animal, not inside of the animal, those will be tested. And those prions have been known to have, for all purposes, I'll just call it space dust on them. And this space dust is not from here, and typically from Orion's belt area. And this is really strange because it's not something that, just came down and we sprinkled it on around the cow. No. This is something that would be similar to, for example, if I drive my truck over in muddy field, and then I park in the parking lot, it's stuck to the mud flaps, right? So this is evidence that whatever vehicle, craft, or mechanical system is used to remove these animals is leaving a telltale trace behind that it's not from here. And that telltale trace is that these prions happen to have dust, space dust, from the Orion area, like Orion's belt. And if you look into what on Earth, or not on Earth, would be doing this stuff, you come to some pretty freaky realizations. And why would there be disturbed prions of the same type on the mud flaps, so to speak? And why cows? Well, the cows have always been very important in all symbolic ways throughout mankind, ever since the beginning, when man first started chiseling things into the rock.